What was the last decision you made, whether it was an easy one or a hard one? We all make easy decisions. What am I going to eat? What am I going to wear? What am I going to watch on TV? For me, the hardest decision I ever had to make was when, in Thanksgiving Day in 1981, my first wife died. 2 weeks later, my 12-year-old son decided that he wanted to go live with his grandparents. That was a decision. In the state of Ohio, if there's a 12-year-old and a family member wants to take custody of them, they are allowed. I could have fought this, but I didn't. Deep inside, I really didn't see the point of it. So as I dropped him off with his grandparents to pick him up, I leaned into him and I said, we all make decisions. And this is a decision you have made and have to live with. I love you, and you can come back at any time. It's always your decision. I'm hoping none of you have to make hard decisions like that. But as we go down the road, there's a lot of things that come up that cloud our judgment. There are so many things that come up. We have a problem making decisions because of, wow, how can we blame our parents for anything else? But they did this to you. They taught you a form of thinking that helped you make all your decisions because they made all the decisions for you. Then you went to school, and all your little schoolmates, they helped you make your decisions. If you went to college, your college friends helped you make some decisions, and a lot of them weren't good ones. This is called consciousness bias. And that's how we make a lot of our decisions. It's based on somebody else's thinking or lore. We all want a nice, clean path. We want a nice, clean path to go down. But we have to make some decisions along the way. I just decided to do away with my background. I Googled how to make a decision. 1.3 million different responses. So the information I'm giving to you, you can refute it if you like, or you can use it if you like. I found that of all the things I looked at, and I didn't look at 1.3 million of them, it made the most sense to me. The first thing that you might consider when you're going to make a decision is to zoom out and take a bird's eye view. And this is where the conceptual bias sets in, because you have to get rid of all those biases in your head. I'm reminded of the story of Louis Zampanelli, who in World War II in 1943's plane had mechanical problems and went down in the Pacific. He and two of his fellow crew members floated for 47 days before they were picked up by the Japanese, and they were tortured for 2 years. In his later years, they were talking to Louis and they said, I bet you hallucinated a lot out there on the life raft. And he goes, no, on the contrary. We had our clearest thinking ever because we were away from the noise and the din of the warfare. And we had a chance to think. That is pure, unbridled zooming out. When you have turned off all that external noise and it's just thought. Hope you don't have to get shot down or have mechanical problems like Louis Zamperini. The second thing you can do is weigh the outcome. In the Battle of the Alamo in March of 1836, it was the 13th day, coming up on the 13th day of the siege, and Colonel Travis drew a line in the sand and said, this is about it. We know it's going to be it. And those of you that want to stay with me, you can come across that line. And those of you that can go, we're not going to hold it against you. You fought valiantly with us for 12 days. Hopefully, none of you will have to make a decision like that. But you always have to weigh every decision you make. If you have a family, even if you're alone, that enters into your decision-making process. So you've zoomed out, you've tried to be very objective about your decision. You know you have to weigh your decision one against the other. The third thing, and this is what keeps people in that decision loop for a long time, they think they have to be perfect. When I did my first YouTube video, I'd already given the speech that I gave, and you guys in the Springfield Club heard it a couple of times. Save minutes to save lives. I've probably given that 30 times. I knew it by heart, inside and out. I could give it a 5-minute version, a 7-minute version, a 15-minute version. I had to film that 5 times on YouTube and fight with it for a month and a half. And finally, I put it out. And guess who paid attention to it? Nobody. Nobody. It was all in my head. Talking about perfection. If you've ever heard Darren LaCroix talk about his winning speech, he gave his winning speech 700 times before he competed. And he still said it wasn't perfect. So done is better than perfect, because perfect will keep you from doing anything. So you're going to zoom out. You're going to look at the overall picture. You're going to weigh the consequences. And you're going to go, I'm going to do good, because perfect takes a little bit longer. And I need to make this decision. And the fourth thing, Heidi, is you got to set a time limit. You got to have a time limit. Otherwise, you could say, oh, well, I have to do some more research here. I have to go try this. I have to go look at this source. I have to go over this way. No, you don't. You need to set a time limit. Some things are self-setting time limits. For example, am I going to take an office with Toastmasters and I've got like 1 day to decide? Some things have an automatic built-in time limit, but those that don't are the hard ones for you to make a decision on. Again, it's because we're not in the habit of making decisions. When I was in nursing school in Arlington, Texas, they had a speaker come, and he was a psychologist. And he had some of the best parenting advice I'd ever heard. It was two-pronged. And the first one was decisions. He had his children pay attention to decisions. They had to make decisions as soon as they were able. And then they were responsible for making their decisions. He gave me an example of his 8-year-old came up to him and wanted to borrow some money for a bicycle. And he said to his son, what do you have for collateral? Collateral? What's collateral? Well, that's what you're going to give me when you don't pay me. He gave example after example how we could use it. And I started using it in my house. When my wife had died, I had to hire a housekeeper to come to keep up with all the clothes my 2 daughters were churning out. I have no fear. I have 2 daughters. My one child would go through 4 sets of jeans a day. And finally, the expense of having this lady come in and continually do this chores became too much. And I said to her, Carolyn, you're now 12 years old. Here's how you run the washing machine. She learned how to do it. And guess what? Instead of 4 pair of pants every day, it's 1 pair of pants lasted 4 days. I got to a point with them and said, I'm not going to clean up your room. It's your room. You do what you want with it. And it's amazing how clean it got when their friends came over without me nagging on them. So as parents or as teachers, we need to make people responsible for their decisions as soon as they can. And that's why they get in the habit of it. So I've talked to you about zooming out and looking at the big picture, weighing the consequences of your decision, and going for it, whether it's perfect or not, and then setting a time limit on it. The second thing I want you to think about is owning it. I want you to step up and own your decision. When Bill Gates came back to Apple after he'd been fired from them, he owned the decision to come back. And he said to him, we're in the hole, millions of dollars. That's a fact. That's it. There was no blame game. There was no, oh, Bill Gates did it. Oh, IBM did it. No, he said, this is it. This is where we're at. Accept the decision you make where you're at. You can't accept the decision you make back here because what you think somebody else did. It's your decision. He decided to come back. And he said to him, we're not in the computer business anymore. We're in the entertainment business. And guess what came out today? The new iPhones, the new iPads. People are lining up. He had a problem. He changed direction. He thought about it. He said, that's the way to go. So you step up and you own your decision. Is it the right decision? Doesn't matter. Whatever decision you make it right. Then empower your decision. Put some legs in it. Get some momentum going. Get in love with that decision. I read a thing about Albert Einstein and his theory of relativity, and it said his original idea, he thought about it, and he probably thought about it too much, for 10 years, day in and day out. And what broke it for him? This is the strangest thing I've ever heard. He was watching a man wash the windows. Sometimes when you got a problem you can't get into, sometimes you just got to maybe take a quick nap or walk away from it. I think that's the point that did it. He stopped thinking about it long enough for the answer to come to him. Sometimes the answer, when you give it legs, will come right to you. So you own your decision, you empower it. I want to talk to you about quickly 2 books that help me make decisions. This first one, Yes, Yes, Hell No, by Brian Whetten, is a very interesting book. And I studied with Brian for over a year. That's where I learned to use Zoom. But then his teaching reached a certain point with me where I didn't. There's a lot of really good stuff in there if you want to make a business. Let me put it that way. But this book over here, The Power of Decision, Charles Barker, that one opened doors for me. Now, some of you have heard of Brene Brown. I probably said her first name wrong. Her whole thing, her TED Talks, all of her empire, all of her speeches are about being vulnerable. I like a lot of her stuff. But the problem with her stuff is she missed the big picture. Decision is the most important function of the human mind. But this book is a little hardcore because it actually says indecision is actually an individual's decision to fail. And if that ain't spanking you around enough, and I just said, I don't care. If you have trouble making up your mind because you're afraid of making a mistake, then you are still an immature child. So this book is only for grown-ups. And now that I've ranted about that, I am going to challenge you all. This is a decision I want you to make. See the off button? I want you to decide that for the next 30 days, you're going to turn off all the social media, all the TV, all the conscious bias that you have built up, all your buddies that support you, or all the people you love to fight with, and turn it off. Watch the Weather Channel maybe, and get the weather you need. Find out what you need to be safe, but turn it off. And then amazing things happen when you turn it off. Then you are going to turn on your creative power. You're going to turn on your creative power to do things, and you're going to make a decision to make a difference. But it's hard, in the words of Louis Zamperini, to think clearly in the din of war. I guarantee you that if you did this for 30 days until a lot of this has calmed down, you will get in the habit of not paying any attention to it. You will not want that continual din because you will be happy making your own decisions and not somebody else's decisions or decisions that you can line up and have everybody say, oh, we agree with you, Bert. You're such a great guy. No, think about it. That's the hardest thing we can do is think. And I want you to think about that decision as I hand it to you, Madam Toastmaster.